Good evening, Guild community and friends that have joined us for this webinar. My name is Maureen Costello-Shea. I'm the Chief Program Officer at the Guild for Human Services. It is my pleasure to welcome you to Choices and the Power of Possibilities. We're very excited tonight to have two parent authors joining us to talk about their journey with their sons with autism. The first person I would like to introduce is Nicole Donovan. Nicole is an author, reflective storyteller, and a teacher. She's a former Montessori educator and an ABA therapist who has worked with a variety of students with a range of different needs. In July 2020, Nicole published A Life Suspended, a mother and son story of autism, extinction burst, and living a resilient life. Within the pages of her book, Nicole describes a path to her son's autism diagnosis and her journey to acceptance and unconditional love, not only for her son Jack, but also for herself. Nicole's vulnerable storytelling cultivates compassion and understanding, opening a door where acceptance and empathy expand. In addition, she is a contributor to The Mighty, an online magazine for people with disabilities, the Autism Parenting magazine, and herself 360. Our second author is Joanne Crawford. It's been the Guild's pleasure for Joanne to be part of the Guild community for many years, and I've known Joanne for over 10 years as a parent of Ian, who lives in our Framingham house now, but also was part of the Guild school for many years. Joanne is a writer, autism advocate, and author of the memoir Choices, One Mother's Determined Search for the Supports to Meet the Needs of Her Aging Autistic Son. A mother of an adult son diagnosed with severe autism, she takes you along her journey, detailing her ongoing race against time, the demands of autism, and all that go with it. Through sharing her personal stories, she hopes to raise awareness of this growing diagnosis and inspire others to find fortitude and faith within themselves and know that their voice matters. She continues to work with special needs students in the public school system and lives in her Habitat for Humanity home on Cape Cod. Before I turn it over to Nicole, I want to let you know that each author is donated a book to be raffled off to participants, and Eliza from our communications department will randomly select 2 participants, and at the end of the event, we will share the names of the participants to whom we will be sending a book. So now I will turn it over to Nicole.
Thank you, Maureen and Richard and the Guild community for inviting us to be here to share our stories with your community. Joanne and I are honored and thrilled to be here with you to share our memoirs about motherhood and raising our children on the autism spectrum. We so appreciate everyone who chose to spend their time here with us this evening. Tonight, I want to share with you 3 gifts that I have been given: the gift of panic, the gift of uncertainty, and the gift of resilience. While these may not sound like gifts, particularly the first 2, I'm going to share with you why they have been for me. And to illustrate this, I will read from my memoir, A Life Suspended, a mother and son story of autism, extinction bursts, and living a resilient life. I am many things to many people. Aside from being a daughter and a wife, I am the mother of 4 sons. This by far has changed me in ways I couldn't have imagined. In 2012, my youngest son was diagnosed with autism. Jack had collected numerous diagnoses starting at the age of 3. But it wasn't until his behavior became disruptive and even explosive during school hours did we uncover what was at the center of Jack's struggles. By this time, Jack had spun out of control. As a first grade student, he was expelled from public school. We chose to educate him in our home. We began to build a team of professionals, which included therapists, teachers, and a board-certified behavior analyst. The responsibility of being Jack's mom, his advocate, and case manager rocked me to my core. I was filled with fear, anxiety, and often felt hopeless. The pressure I placed upon myself and the stress of the situation as a whole took its toll on me, and I began to have panic attacks. The gift of panic. Jack had cycled through a lengthy extinction burst where his behavior was explosive and destructive. We were a couple of months into him being at home full time. On this day, his occupational therapist made a house call to meet with his team to give us tools and strategies to help him regulate his body and his emotions. And on this day, like many others during this time, I experienced a panic attack. Chapter 13, the zones of regulation. Beads of perspiration swelled at my hairline as my clammy hands gripped the rubber band and plastic disc. I was out of my league. Parenting a typical child was challenging enough. How in the heck was I going to raise a child on the autism spectrum? What if I couldn't? What if it got worse? What if he stayed home forever and never went back to school? Pins and needles traveled in waves from my fingers and toes towards the center of my body. Oh God, don't let me have a panic attack now. Not in front of Jack's professionals. No, no, no. Just breathe. In and out. In and out. Their voices faded into the background. I slowly moved my body away from the door frame and into the hallway, facing the bathroom door. A whirlwind of negative thoughts twisted inside of my head. I imagined Jack running away out into traffic, getting hit by an oncoming car. I saw him lash out at me and punch me as if he had done before. I saw him sloped over on the floor, wailing and rocking back and forth. My heart pounded. I shut the bathroom door behind me and staggered to the side of the tub. The materials that were in my hand fell to the floor. With my knees spread, I leaned in between them and closed my eyes. How would I remember all of what I needed to do that was required for his success? How was I going to execute the sequence steps of his behavior plan? How would I be the mother that Jack needed, the mother he deserved? My chest was light, as if it was being lifted by winged butterflies. I concentrated on my breath, attempting to bring my anxiety down. Several minutes passed. Once my breathing was even, I stood up and wiped a cold cloth across my face. My body felt more grounded, and I could no longer feel my heartbeat, no more pounding or fluttering wings, and the tingling sensation had finally subsided. I was relieved that this episode was much shorter than the previous one. I opened the bathroom door and made my way out into the hallway. The therapist backed out of Jack and Aiden's room, the last room upstairs to be addressed during the meeting. Maggie, the OT, looked at my face and returned a sympathetic smile. I know this is like a foreign language. Don't worry. I will type it out so we all can use this as a reference. She reached out and touched my arm. The unexpected gift of panic brought me to my own therapy sessions, where I unpacked my fear, replayed scenes where I felt victimized, and learned how to soothe my battered and bruised heart. In these situations, I focused on me, these sessions, I focused on me and on my healing. The panic attacks were my body's way of waving the white flag. And due to their unpredictable nature, as I never knew when they would show up or how long they would last, I had to address my fears and adopt tools to manage my ongoing anxiety. What I found lingering in the dark corners was trauma. The gift of panic was a revelation to me. It gave me the clarity to see that the fear of the unknown was in the driver's seat. As I healed and opened to the awareness of these gifts, I rediscovered something far greater than fear. Chapter 24, Acceptance. One evening, after homework and showers had been checked off the list, I sat in a chair with a cup of my favorite tea. I pulled out my journal and I began to write, releasing the chatter that had been collecting in my mind. I paused midstream to catch my next thought, and I heard my inner voice speak. Acceptance is the answer to all your problems today. I was startled when I heard the voice, as it was crystal clear and cutting. Ugh, really? This is what you send me? I said out loud, mildly annoyed, as I was looking for a moment of peace, not unsolicited advice. Although I was irritated by the interruption, I knew deep in my gut that it was true. Several days later, I found myself in my therapist's office thinking about this message. I am really struggling with this idea of acceptance as the answer, I blurted out during our session. I can see that, Janet said, as she gestured to my folded arms crossing my chest. I listed off all the reasons. Some of them were old tapes from past trespasses, things that had been ignored or neglected. Some of them were current fears about timing and transition, or the dynamics of the team and the struggle not to take it personally. Monthly meetings were still ongoing, draining financial resources and precious time. I was emotionally spent returning to the same place over and over again. We sat in the quiet, letting it fill with the sounds of the night that seeped through an open window. How can I accept it? How can I accept the things that are unacceptable? I asked her. After a thoughtful minute, Janet responded, accepting the things we cannot change can be very freeing. Accepting a situation as it is in that moment can be healing. I'm not asking you to accept unacceptable behavior. I'm reminding you of what you already know. We cannot change the past, nor can you control the future. All you can do is be present in today. But that is what I'm doing. Is it? She asked, raising her left eyebrow. You have done an amazing job. What you and your family have gone through, the trauma, the extinction burst, therapies, and the relentless insistence of holding a team accountable. There is no question. You have been there for him. You have put him ahead of everything else. Accepting what is right now allows you the grace to find peace within the situations, Janet said, studying my face. Every time I come across a situation when they're dragging their feet, it feels personal, like they're trying to sabotage him and his accomplishments, I said. Part of accepting what is letting go of the past and the future. We accept the things we cannot change, find the courage to change the things we can, and we seek wisdom to know the difference, she said. The Serenity Prayer. Yes, I'm familiar, but it's not that easy. It's not easy. It's simple, she said. An uncontrollable wave of laughter filled the small room. She knew I would understand the tongue-in-cheek reference that she was making. I was not new to this concept of letting go. I had used the Serenity Prayer in the past, and I had found it helpful. But Jack is a child, one that could not speak for himself. Letting go felt more complicated. I had become buried and weighed down by the recent fear and drama, which fed into my coping mechanism, control. You remember what we had discussed. You may not have control over Jack and his programming or the people, places, and things, but you do have control over how you deal with it. Acceptance is a superpower, she said. Yes, I have had moments, even periods of time when I would feel peaceful and free, when I have been able to step back and to trust, I said. Well, when the fear comes back, as fear does, I want you to disrupt its flow. You can recite the prayer or simply say, I'm choosing to trust myself and the process. And by interrupting the thoughts coming into your mind, it will break this dysfunctional cycle. I feel like I've gone through stages of trusting the people he's working with and trusting ourselves as his parents. It's been a bit of a tug of war, but it always is before we fully surrender. She smiled. Where do I begin? I asked. You need to get back to who you are. You said that you're a writer. Yes, I've always journaled, I said, feeling a bit perplexed by her question, as it had never been a paid vocation. It is at the core of who you are. Write about good things. Go back in time and find the spiritual breadcrumbs, the synchronicities that brought you here. Fill your pages with that are focused on gratitude, and it will transform you. You will let go. I allowed her words to breathe into me, filling me with hope. The gift of uncertainty has allowed me to deepen into faith. As I practiced letting go, faith took hold. But the faith I found wasn't rooted in others. It was rooted in me, in Jack, and in something bigger than ourselves. Chapter 28, Sailing Lessons. Another week had passed. Jack had been at sailing lessons for 2 weeks and had been equally excited and exasperated learning how to sail and navigate around the lake. To my surprise, he enjoyed capsize day. But later in the week, I heard him shouting orders at his sailing partner as they drifted away from the group. The instructors had seen Jack's boat and circled back in their little powered dinghy to assist them. In the end, he took instruction and the boat was righted. But there was no aid or place to take a yellow break on a tiny sailboat. It was a real life situation, and I was pleased that he came back to his center. Regardless, I was definitely out of my comfort zone. I planted myself in the beach area next to the boathouse. I journaled and continued my push-pull relationship with fear and trust while I waited during the 2-hour class. To mark the end of the session, the instructors put on Pirate Day. It was a treasure-seeking competition using boats to sail to the small islands within the lake to gather clues where the pirate's booty was buried. Teams of 2 worked together on this epic journey, using skills and knowledge that they had accumulated over the past few weeks. raising the bar even higher. Jack's eldest brothers had talked about Pirate Day for years. Kieran's pirating stories were legendary. Jack had even heard the instructors talk about Kieran's feat to get the gold, probably as a cautionary tale, but I got the feeling that there was a thread of, can you believe that kid, mixed in with equal admiration of the stories they told. Competition ran deep as both Patrick and Kieran were in the same class. Mayhem ensued. There was sabotage, boat tipping, and mast scaling. Thankfully, no one got hurt. And although it was never directly said, new rules were put into place after the year of the Donovan boys. The majority of the competition took place on the water and on the sister islands in the center of the lake. I watched as they sailed offshore. The sailing instructors traveled behind them in their little motorboat. Jack's boat had a rainbow sail with a fish on it. He was at the stern and his partner was in the middle of the boat as they gently moved to the first island. I felt relieved that I could see which boat he was on, but as they glided away, I began to feel uncomfortable. Fear was bubbling up. As the boat's size diminished, I started to laugh, all by myself, in my beach chair at the edge of the pond. I burst out into uncontrollable belly laughter. It struck me hard. I had absolutely no control over Jack and his behaviors or emotions. He was on a freaking boat in the middle of a lake. If something was going down, I had no way of intervening or protecting him. And at the heart of it all, control had been riding shotgun in my life. I had been determined to keep things afloat and flowing smoothly. No bumps, no detours allowed. As I sat feeling uncomfortable, it was clear to me it wasn't about Jack on a lake. It was everything, and control was an illusion. Even with the matrix of support, it was up to him. In addition, he was a human child. He would have missteps. Why were my expectations for him greater than they were for his brothers? Was it because the stakes were high? That our options were limited? We were pioneering a trail, cobbling together a program in a public school system with hopes that they would work. I couldn't control it all. I planted the seeds, fertilized, watered, and nurtured the garden. But in the end, other influences would play a part. Factors like the sun, the environment, and Jack. Time crawled as I watched the boats crisscross from island to island. I could barely make out the differences in the sails, but I did see a couple of bodies jumping ship before making land. The sound of laughter and yelling echoed across the calm water. I took a breath and closed my eyes and listened to the sound of competition, discovery, and excitement. These were sounds of childhood. And no matter what happened on the water, it was another opportunity for Jack to grow. Heck, it was an opportunity for me to grow too. Why did I let my fear override my excitement for his independence? I took another breath and slowly released the air from my lungs. A moment later, I felt something tickle my foot. I glanced down to see that a dragonfly had landed on the top of my toe. Its wings shimmered in the sunlight, and the deep blue of its body had an iridescent glow. Earlier in the week, a friend of mine shared with me her encounter with a bunch of dragonflies while she was visiting her sister's grave. It was as if they were performing a dance of celebration for her. She looked up the spiritual meaning for the dragonfly when she got home. And when she told me what she found, I got goosebumps. The symbolism of the dragonfly is one of transformation and adaptability, to see beyond the illusion of what is on the surface, to find joy in the moment. For my dear friend, the spirit of the dragonfly invited her to feel happiness for her sister's transformation. It was a powerful message, one that my friend needed to hear. As I watched the dragonfly dart off and skim across the top of water, I heard my inner voice say, "Thank you." I acknowledged nature's nod to me, the synchronicities of hearing about my friend's experience just days prior and being touched by the dragonfly at that exact moment. I felt a wave of peace wash over me. Fear is the illusion. I can't control Jack, or anyone else for that matter. Transformation was happening before my very eyes, in me and in Jack. We were loved and supported, and no matter how things played out, we would be okay. Sounds of victory bellowed out from the path that led to the boathouse. The pirates had landed back on shore. I began to pack up, tucked my folded chair under my arm, and headed for the boathouse. I arrived at the clearing and saw the group of outlaws eating their bounty of snacks. Jack was talking to another child who was holding a golden trophy. Jack saw me and broke his conversation midstream to announce that his buddy Sam was victorious. "Sam won. Sam is just like Captain Kidd, Mom," he said loudly. Sam's smile widened, and so did Jack's. "My boat came in third, but not last," he said in a quieter tone as he pointed over to the two boys sitting together chewing Twizzlers under a tree. "But it doesn't matter because we all share in the captain's treasure," he said as he shoved a small white cupcake into his mouth. Victory is best when shared, I thought, as I watched Jack celebrate with his peers. Transformation and adaptability were ever present. My heart softened as the day's awareness took hold. Letting go of fear, of the illusion of control, was freeing. To witness Jack's success as he navigated new situations was icing on the cupcake. As our lives have played on beyond the boundaries of these pages, I have seen these gifts take hold. The ongoing challenges in the early years of Jack's diagnosis had to be addressed daily. The commitment we had to show up over and over again gave us the gift of resilience. In living a resilient life, I no longer strive for perfection. I understand that practice doesn't make perfect, it makes a life. Today, I find laughter in the folds of chaos as I understand that fear doesn't have to override joy. I find pockets of peace, even if the world feels like it's falling apart. In the seemingly ordinary details of the past, I have found them steeped deep in faith. As I rise each day, I open my heart and my mind to the uncertainty of it. In uncertainty, there is limitless possibility. How do you know this, you might ask? Well, just ask my son, Jack. Thank you for listening to my part of the presentation called Three Gifts and the selected passages that I've read from my book, A Life Suspended. We will open it up for questions and conversation at the end, but now it's time for my beautiful friend and colleague, Joanne Crawford, to share from her book, Choices.
All right, I'm going to begin with giving you a little background. My son was born in 1993, and at age 2.5, Ian still wasn't speaking. But the doctor assured me boys are slow, so I didn't pay much mind to it. And by age 3, he was diagnosed with severe autism. Ian is nonverbal. He doesn't speak or understand normal conversation. And I've spent over 20 years searching for doctors and therapies, fighting for services, and advocating for his rights. In 2015, he turned 22. Overnight, he was forced out of his residential school and into the world of adult services. This proved to be my greatest challenge of all. I'd like to read an excerpt from my book Choices about that time, titled The Letter. Gerald's reply admitted something should have been done last year and assured me Ian would be placed by his 22nd birthday. His office would provide updates and devise a plan B. At this point, the words and actions of DDS caused me to take great pause. I had lost faith in its integrity and the role it was supposed to play in this process. My son's future was in the hands of a local agency that had no real interest in his well-being. He was one of the many getting lost in the shuffle of the system. Someone in authority needed to know what was happening down here in the trenches. But who? I sat at my kitchen table and wrote a letter to President Barack Obama. Dear Mr. President, I need your help. I am a single mother of 2 young adult children. My son has severe autism. Over the years, I have struggled to keep a balanced home environment and am blessed to be the proud owner of a Habitat for Humanity home. In 2008, I made the heart-wrenching decision to place my 15-year-old son in a special needs residential school. However, for the first time since his diagnosis, I was able to seek full-time employment. And for the past 7 years, I have been working as a special needs education assistant in the public school system. Inspired by my experience with my own severely autistic son, I felt compelled to give back to the community by helping other children. The accumulated knowledge and skills, both personal and professional, have enabled me to be effective in all classroom settings, severe, moderate, and learning disabled. My son turns 22 in March 2015. He will be forced out of the public school system and into the world of adult services. I have experienced little to no support from the Department of Developmental Services during this past year, an important transitional year. The task of searching for an appropriate placement in adult rehabilitation has been placed on me. Although it is the job of DDS to provide guidance through this transition, I found myself scrambling to locate and network Dahabs in the area where he will live in a group home. Now, in the 11th hour, I am running into the challenge of no openings. Dayhab programs are at full capacity. My son requires an intensive program, and when I asked DDS what could be done for my son while we continue the search for an appropriate placement, I was told he would have to come home. I cannot believe this would even be allowed. The reason he was approved for an outplacement in a special needs residential school at the age of 15 speaks volumes. I am a single parent. I will be 60 years old in June 2015. My son is literally head and shoulders above me. Requiring him to move back home would be disastrous, jeopardize his safety, my safety, and displace me from the workplace. I would have no means of support and would lose everything I worked for, including my home. My son should not have to suffer as a result of DDS's lack of planning. I am asking for your help in changing the way DDS handles these transitions. People like my son are not just a number. They have lives and families too. We need more rehabilitation programs and housing to accommodate these young adults with autism. 1 in 68 are diagnosed with autism. An estimated 500,000 will turn 22 and transition out of the public and residential schools nationwide over the next 15 years. We are not prepared to receive this deluge of young adults with autism. Where will they go? This could surely overwhelm the healthcare system. Being more than aware of the need, I am trying to be part of the solution on a small scale. And for the last 4 years, I have held the position of secretary on the board of directors for a nonprofit building housing for adults with autism. I was one of the original handful of parents who launched this grassroots movement in 2011 to create meaningful and dignified lives for adults with autism. This year, we closed on a parcel of land. We are actively fundraising and raising awareness of the increasing need for community like this. This model would not only provide housing, but also structure, support, and integration into the wider community. Autism is beyond epidemic proportions. Although diagnosis and early intervention has improved, there is still no cure. Yet no one is planning for the imminent tsunami of aging young adults with autism. I ask that you make this a priority of national conversation in healthcare. Education and awareness are key to the solution. Thank you for listening. Respectfully. I stamped and sealed the envelope with a wish and a prayer that someone would read it. I mailed it on March 1st, 2015. The letter, part 2. It was a late June afternoon in 2015. I had just picked up my 24-year-old daughter from work and was heading home. I reached the top of my driveway, put the car in park, and hopped out to check my mailbox. I grabbed a handful of envelopes and slid back into the car. Glancing at this pile of mail, I noticed the return address on one white business envelope. It read, the White House. Why would the White House send me junk mail, I thought. In the few seconds it took to reach the bottom of my driveway, I realized this might be a reply to the letter I sent back in March. Stunned by this possibility, I turned to my daughter. This might be a reply to my letter to President Obama. Open it, she demanded. I carefully unfolded the letter. It was on White House stationery with a raised seal and what appeared to be the president's personal signature written with a felt tip pen. As I read the words aloud, tears rolled down my cheeks. My brain was trying to process what I was hearing myself say. We both sat in the car, stunned by what we were experiencing. My letter had been selected out of the tens of thousands received by the White House every day. My letter was chosen to be read and answered personally by the President of the United States. President Obama had validated me. My voice had been heard. 2 months later, the phone rang. I looked at the incoming call. No name, just an unfamiliar number. I don't usually answer those calls because it's most likely a telemarketer on the other end. But this time, something told me to pick up. A man gave me his name, the way telemarketers do, and I confirmed he was in fact speaking to me. He identified himself as a member of the President's Committee for People with Intellectual Disabilities. President Obama had asked him to follow up on a letter sent him regarding my son. I felt the body rush of elation and nervousness simultaneously. We chatted for the next 30 minutes about the need for a national conversation about autism, its aging population, and the need for a plan to care for them. I expressed my gratitude for President Obama's letter and also for his phone call. I told him how much it meant to be validated and heard, that parents like me are not often heard. Our cries to meet the needs of our children are often dismissed, become an uphill battle of negotiation with agencies and schools. He praised my advocacy for my son and my volunteer work. He promised to send a follow-up email with his contact information should I have any additional questions. Days later, I received that email as promised. Unbeknownst to me, this would initiate an 8-month online email conversation that would spotlight a much bigger issue. So the details of my story may be different, but the common threads of autism are the same. 1 in 54 are now diagnosed with autism, and 1 in 54 families has a story like mine. Autism takes you on a roller coaster ride into an unknown, confusing world of uncertainty that tries the depths of your strength and wears you down emotionally, physically, and financially. Families like mine are running a desperate race against time. Autism changes everything. My memoir, Choices, was released in 2019. It's not a resource book. It doesn't have answers to the latest breakthrough treatments or therapies. It's a book about a parent up against autism and all that comes with it. It's a story about challenges, courage, and resilience. A story that I hope will educate, empower, and inspire others to know that they are not alone. My wish is that Choices sparks new insight on these 3 things. 1, you always have a choice. Even if you choose to do nothing, that is still a choice. 2, your voice matters. Do not be afraid to speak your truth. As special needs parents, and specifically as women in general, our voices are often dismissed. Keep speaking anyway. Someone will hear you. Be heard. And last, just begin. And sometimes this can be one of the hardest steps. But once you are in motion, more opportunities will present themselves. Stay the course. Don't give up. And trust your instincts. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joanne and Nicole. Nicole, if you want to turn your camera back on, then we can begin with questions.
There she is.
There we go. So the first question I have is for Nicole. And that is, some of the audience members are unfamiliar with the term extinction burst. Could you explain?
I was too, until I met my ABA. So an extinction burst is when there's a behavior that is we're trying to extinguish, to end. For Jack, it was leaving school, explosive behaviors, things like that. So the extinction burst would happen when we were ignoring or not giving any reinforcement to whatever behavior we were trying to extinct. And then that behavior would tick up to get even more intense. And then when we would ignore it, eventually it would burst. And then he would have this maladaptive behavior would be, smoothed out, and he would make better choices, or he would be able to regulate his body better. So it's basically when a behavior becomes more intense before it actually dissipates.
Mhm.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So for each of you, we'll start with Joanne first. After your experiences in raising a child with autism, what would you tell a parent whose child is newly diagnosed?
Newly diagnosed, first to take a breath and, try to process what you were just given. I think when you're handed the diagnosis, at least when I was handed the diagnosis, I had never even heard the word. So it was totally foreign to me. But I would say that, in this day and age, gather information from all resources, talk to people that have relatives or friends or teach, special needs. I would Google everything I could find. I would contact organizations. I think my best sources were through the medical community first, then the school system. They referred me to other organizations, and it was a lot of word of mouth for me. So I was more limited than today. But I would say, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Basically, talk to your doctors, talk to your educators, talk to the therapists, and then do research on your own and talk to other families, talk to other parents, and then go with your gut. Your kid. That's why I say trust your instincts. There you have all these people out there that are experts in their area, but you are an expert too. You know your child best.
Nicole?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything that Joanne said. The only thing I would add, as I don't think she mentioned it, is that for us, we were in such crisis when Jack, right before he got his diagnosis of autism, that we were just in a panic. We didn't know what to do because he exploded out the door of his school and was displaced. And we had the good fortune of knowing someone who had an educational advocate. And so I contacted the advocate, and she really, really was instrumental in not only helping us understand the jargon and how to look at an evaluation and to tease those things out. Like, she really had all that information and that expertise to sit in the meeting and really help us understand like what our rights were and what the laws were and what we could ask for, and encouraged us to really find our footing in that and be his advocates alongside of her. And I thank God every day that she came into our lives, because he would not have been in the place that he has gotten to today without her being instrumental in his life at that time. And she knew so many different resources that she could suggest and recommend, and these people became part of his team. So she really, really was instrumental in helping us not only understand where we were in that position, helping us advocate for him, and then also helping us gather that team that was the right fit for Jack.
Joanne, what inspired you to write your memoir?
Well, I think it was just compelling. I did have a friend that encouraged me for quite some time to write. And, I never thought of myself as a writer. I'm like, I wrote maybe a little article, but that was it. But I think the real reason I decided to put it into book form was that it shouldn't have to be this hard, and also people need to know they're not alone, and that they have a voice. I think there a lot of parents out there, they worry that if they speak up, they may not get the services that they not only ask for, but that their child already has, or they, the teachers are not going to work with them, the therapists aren't going to work with them. And it's all fear-based. And I say that, it's a negotiation, right? And you try to meet the needs of whatever that child needs, right? To the right supports, to be successful as they can be, whatever that is for them, right? So I think I just wanted people to know that, I am everyday parent, and I'm going through this just like you. And if I can do it, so can you. And don't give up. Don't give up. Keep asking for help. Don't be afraid to ask for help. And like Nicole said, one important detail I forgot. Yeah, an advocate. Arm yourself with that. But I just want people to know that it's possible. It's possible, and not to give up. And if I can do it, so can they.
Thank you. A question in our chat for both of you is, as a service provider, the person asking this question is an occupational therapist. What are the things that I can do to best support families?
That's a good one. And thank you for being an occupational therapist.
Yes, thank
my son, Jack, went to see an amazing OT for years, and she became a good friend over time, and we are so grateful for her. But I think for me as a parent, just being able to have that carryover from the OT room to my home, to the school, like knowing what that sensory diet looked like, and in all settings, like a sensory diet in the school looks different sometimes than what it looked like in the house.
Yeah.
And how to implement these strategies. For Jack, he did a lot of zones of regulation, like we eat and drank and slept, the color chart and what it meant. And it was posted everywhere. So for us, having the same language, having an understanding of the carryover into all the settings, and having that communication and that dialogue where the OT and the school and us were all communicating. I think that having that consult time on an IEP is just so necessary to have those few minutes, however it's allocated in the IEP. But that has been super helpful for Jack to not only understand these strategies and implement them, but it has taken less time. If one was doing one thing and another setting wasn't doing it the same way, or didn't even know it was there, it threw a wrench in his regulation system, and it became a problem sometimes. So we were so grateful to have that scaffolding with our team. So that's really what I would share about that.
I think, yeah, that's what you're saying, Nicole, is so important, the carryover into the home. I was also able to get OT in the home through the VNA. So he got services in school, after school, and sometimes down at the medical place in Hyannis. So we were very busy, and the in-home piece is very important. Not only just carry over, for the few hours after school into the evening, but during any kind of break, any kind of vacation, because being out of routine for these kids is really a problem. And so that is important. If there could be a program or structure for parents to follow, after school and over vacation time when they're not in school, just to be consistent, But one of the other things I think too, going back to people being intimidated, I think, they get intimidated by the jargon used at IEP meetings, and I understand there's a whole different language. And, I would go to these IEP meetings, and therapists and teachers are using all these words. I had no idea what they're talking about. And I was like, this is very nice, but I don't know what you're talking about. What you're saying, I don't understand. And so I think that, giving them the vocabulary and the meaning behind it, what it means, because, it's like speaking another language to, speaking Chinese to somebody who speaks English, but yeah, that in addition to the home piece is very important.
Nicole, what is something you learned about yourself during the process of writing and publishing your book?
I think I learned how much I personally learned from our experience with Jack. When we were going through everything and he was being schooled in our house and the Extinction Burst was happening and all of these, it was very, very stressful. I had to show up every day. You just can't check out, right? Because your kid needs you and you got to show up every day. And that's what I did. And over time, I built this resilience to show up. And when I was writing my book, there were times when I would just I was setting up my website and I just sobbed because I'm like, I can't do it. I can't do it. And it sounds silly, but that's not my strong suit. I'm not a technical girl. I'm a writer. So, but I would ask for help, like all the tools that I learned when I was in the trenches with Jack and I was getting, I was being that hub of communication. I was executing, I was asking for help. I was making phone calls, all of those skills, that skill set and the resiliency. I really learned that. And then I carried that over into this life of publishing. Because I decided, actually, Joanne and we met together at a self-publishing workshop when I was so rooted that I was not going to self-publish. I'm like, I am not self-publishing, but I had a friend drag me there. I'm like, fine, I'll go. I met Joanne. What a beautiful thing that was. And so it's really interesting that I think if I didn't have had that experience, to kind of toughen me up and to let me know that I could do things like this, I could do hard things, that I don't think I would have done it. I'm not sure, you know what I mean? Like, I really think that having that experience with my son really empowered me to believe that I could do this. And it also, because of the subject, and I felt like I really wanted to be a voice for families that were in the trenches. And I really wanted to be a voice to help educate other people about autism and what it looks like for certain families. And, because it's every family is a little different, but what it looks like. And so that really propelled me and really kept that fire underneath my feet to get it done. So I think that's kind of the caveat of what it really helped me to learn about me.
For Nicole, and then similar question for Joanne as we wrap up. Nicole, how old is Jack now, and how is he doing?
Jack is 16, almost 17. He towers over me. So that's the joke. Like, Jack, can you get that for me in the kitchen? Yeah, he's working part-time. He's going to school. He goes to a smaller setting school, which has really worked well for him. He's a mentor. He's got lots of friends. I mean, it's just amazing to me that I look back when this kid was 7.5 and he was literally blowing things up, running out of buildings, and so dysregulated. The poor kid was just so dysregulated, just to see how far he's come. And he's worked so incredibly hard at like regulating his body and learning how to write and learning all these skill sets that have carried him into where he is now. And it's wow, it's really amazing. And I'm so, so proud of him.
Joanne, can you share with folks how Ian is doing now?
Ian's doing great. Yeah, as you know, he's 28 and like your son, much taller than I. And he knows it. I mean, he looks down at me with a half smile, but he's doing really well. I mean, Ian has come light years from when he started out. Never mind when he was little. I mean, I never even knew that if I was going to hear his voice, So, and then in his 20s, he kind of settled down a little bit. We went through a very intense hormonal period in his teens and, probably up until his early 20s, but he is doing really super now. And I'm very, very happy with, where he is and his care. And I keep saying that the Guild has earth angels working there because, the therapists and the teachers and the caregivers, that work with them all day long, every single day, they are the ones that choose to do this. We parents, we're handed this, it just happened. But these are the people that choose to do this, for their career. And it just amazes me. It really amazes me.
Well, thank you so much to Nicole and Joanne. It's been amazing having you join us tonight. As you look in the chat, I'm sure you can see the many positive comments from folks But, you know, I think your sharing has meant a tremendous amount to everyone who has participated. The two participants that have been selected through the random raffle to receive each a book are Faye Ginsburg and Carol Slipowitz. And so we will get those books out to you. And thank everyone for participating in what has been our first webinar like this for our community, but certainly, you know, not our last. So again, thank you so much, both Joanne and Nicole.
Thank you, Maureen.
Thank you for having us.
Good night, everyone. And if you want to, if you are not a Guild family and you want a copy of the webinar, you can email either Eliza, Rich, or myself, and we will make sure you have access to a copy. Good evening and have a great night, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye. Oh. No, there's somebody on. Is this on?